Was slavery really preferable to death? PragerU would have you believe so. For those of you who are new to this channel, I am a law professor and historian. My area of scholarly research is in the laws and the codes that sustained and maintained the antebellum slaveocracy. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I sit here on YouTube and I preach and I teach about the white supremacist and racist foundations of the system of African slavery in the United States and how important it is to continue to teach the horrors of this system to students today. So today what we're going to look at is two cases from the state of Louisiana during the antebellum time period that come from the Louisiana Supreme Court, and case citations will be in the video description, that show that in fact many enslaved people chose to end their existence. And I'm going to be very careful with the words and terms I use here on YouTube. And this is going to be a very difficult video to watch, so just a trigger warning there for you. Many enslaved people chose to end their existence, and even the existence of their family members, in order to avoid continuing to be enslaved. They chose the ending of their existence rather than to continue in this system of horrific slavery. So the reason that I'm making this video is I had watched a video that Planet Peterson, another YouTuber, made a little while ago, and I had also recently made a response to another PragerU video with Candace Owens about the origins of slavery. And you've heard me say many times in this channel that yes, other people other than Africans were enslaved. Whites were enslaved. All sorts of people were enslaved, and almost every civilization in its existence at one point had a system of slavery. However, one does not take away from the other. Because white people were enslaved somewhere else doesn't take away from the white supremacist racial foundations of African slavery in the United States, and it doesn't take away our responsibility for it and our responsibility to continue to learn and teach about it so that it is never forgotten. Slavery in the United States is an intricate part of our history, and it is something that needs to continue to be studied at all costs and not swept under the table. Whereas exhibits about slavery in the Smithsonian offended President Trump, that's sorry, too bad, so sad. It is something that we simply cannot gloss over. And doing so not only does a disservice to our history and our origins, but it is the reason why we have a very difficult time understanding where we are today. Because if you truly understand that the system of African slavery in the antebellum South, leading all the way up to the Confederacy, which was founded for the sole purpose of continuing the institution of African slavery and white supremacy forever in their minds, when you understand that that is truly the foundation of it, then you realize that with the 13th Amendment, these racist beliefs and racist people didn't simply disappear. They didn't simply change their minds. They continued through the Reconstruction period, through the post-Civil War era, into the early 20th century, and so on. And that is why you see so many ethnic minorities have a distrust of the legal system today, because we've never adequately answered the problems that racial-based slavery caused in the United States. And simply saying, I know slavery was bad, is not enough. And what I do as a law professor, which is different than other historians, is I focus almost exclusively on the laws, on the written opinions of the judges and jurists during the antebellum time period. So I'm getting the words directly from the enslavers' mouths to show you how horrible this system of antebellum slavery actually was. Now, as I said today, we're going to challenge this PragerU video. Now, this PragerU video that Planet Peterson made a video on was dealing with Columbus. And it was a cartoon about two children who I guess went back in time, were asking Columbus questions about what he did. And of course, it's meant to, soften the blow of Columbus, and of course to promote Columbus Day and all that other sort of stuff. But my ears keyed up, I perked up when I heard the children had asked Columbus something about his enslavement of the Native Americans when he got here. And his response was, well, isn't slavery better than death? And that immediately perked me up, because I had just written an article that was published in a law journal here in Louisiana, at LSU actually, the Journal of Social Justice, I believe, in Louisiana State University Law School. And I wrote this article because in 2025, we are now at the 200th anniversary of Louisiana Civil Code. And there was an outreach to law professors and historians to write articles about the Civil Code on its anniversary. So I decided to write an article about the Louisiana Civil Code and how it codified African slavery in the state of Louisiana. And when I heard the cartoon say, isn't slavery better than death? two cases immediately popped into my mind. And these are, again, very horrific, so just be prepared as I go through them. One is Kemp v. Hutchinson, the other is Walker v. Hayes. And I'll put descriptions, links to the case citations in the video description, and I'll also put a link to my article that I wrote in the video description as well. So let's look at these and let's ask ourselves if enslaved people actually thought that slavery was preferable to death. So in Kemp v. Hutcherson, the plaintiff was an overseer who was not paid by an enslaver, a slave owner, because the slave owner believed that he was responsible for the death of one of his enslaved persons. And as the story goes, the overseer had ordered that this enslaved person be whipped twice in one day because he accused her of stealing something. And he told her that the punishments would continue unless she was able to produce the stolen items and give it to him. So throughout the entire punishment, and by the way, being whipped twice a day is horrific in and of itself. And the threat of this continuing, you can only imagine what is going through this woman's head. Now, she continued to deny the theft. She said she didn't steal anything. She doesn't have anything. However, she said she would attempt to find the items. The overseer let her go to go and attempt to find the items. She went down to a local river and drowned herself. So she chose to end her own life rather than to continue to receive this horrific punishment from this overseer. So is slavery preferable to death? Not according to this woman. She was so... You can't even... We can't sit here and imagine the emotional pressure, what was going through her mind as she was being whipped twice in a day, and the threat of this whipping continuing to the point where she said, I didn't take it, but I'll go find it, which in my heart of hearts, I truly believe this woman didn't actually take anything, because why wouldn't you just come back with the item? You probably know you're going to be, punished or beaten or assaulted anyway, but at least maybe it might stop. Here she chose the extreme. She chose to end her life rather than go back and submit and exist in the system of slavery. The funny thing is, and I say funny, in a horrific sort of way, is that the Louisiana Supreme Court found that the overseer wasn't liable for the slave's death because it was the voluntary act of drowning herself that resulted in her death rather than his brutal twice in one day whippings and threatens for the whippings to continue. So she clearly believed that death was preferable than to remain in a system of enslavement. In Walker v. Hayes, the next case we're going to look at, the defendant purchased from the plaintiff an enslaved woman and her child. So the plaintiff was a slave dealer. The defendant purchased the woman and the child. The reason that the plaintiff is suing the defendant here is the defendant did not pay the plaintiff for the woman and the child because before they were delivered to the defendant, they were still under the plaintiff's care. The enslaved woman ran away with her child, went to a local body of water, and drowned herself and her child. So again, in this situation, not only did the enslaved person choose to end her own life, she chose to end the life of her child because she believed that death was preferable to being in this system of slavery in the antebellum South. So I just wanted to make this quick video to show you that when you hear a lot of these things, when you hear, slavery apologists and revisionist historians and, neo-Confederates and all of this desire to soften how horrible the antebellum South actually was when it came to the system of slavery, you really need to look at things like this, Columbus saying, slavery is better than death, no, and ask yourself, well, what did the enslaved people think about it? Of course, many clearly did. Many believed that, life was still, better than death, even in a system of slavery, but it shows you how horrible the system was that many people, and this is just two cases from Louisiana that made it all the way to the Supreme Court. And these are cases because people were, enslavers and overseers, were now out of money, which shows you again how horrific the system was because this is about property rights, and they were suing each other. So how many others went unnoticed, or nobody cared, or it wasn't, if I am the enslaver and my action causes my slave to drown themselves or to off themselves or to end their life or their existence, and again, I'm trying to be diplomatic with the words I use on YouTube, I have no one to sue. There's no record there, so it's not recorded. So this could have happened, and probably did happen, many more times than we actually realize. So when you see groups like PragerU that are now being used in school systems to teach history, we really have to vet all of this and look at it and challenge their revisionist view of the system of antebellum slavery in the South, because it was much more horrific than any of us actually realize. So was slavery preferable to death? According to many enslaved, not really. As always, remember to like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you for the next video.